stack of fake passports, a trail of secrets. Over 50 years, the Isdal woman's story has stumped everyone. Who was she? Why did she vanish in flames?
Dette tennene til isdalske. Det helt utrolig. Jeg hadde ikke tro på det egentlig.
In 2025, the truth finally broke free, and it's wilder than anyone guessed.
If the Isdal woman wasn't alone, the other person could have seen this fisherman and understood that he would go to the police and report. So maybe this number 2 is the man who later on, because she maybe tried to get off the hook.
This isn't just a cold case. It's a riddle that's kept us up at night. Stick around, because what's coming will flip everything you thought you knew. Let's rewind the clock to November 29th, 1970, and drop into a chilly, rugged corner of Norway called Isdalen Valley, just outside Bergen. It's a Sunday morning, crisp and quiet, the kind of day you'd expect to hear nothing but the crunch of frost underfoot. A local guy's out hiking with his 2 young daughters. Maybe they're chasing a bit of adventure, hoping to spot some wildlife or collect a few odd stones. Instead, they stumble across something that'll stick with them forever. Her arms are locked in this eerie boxer pose, fists up, elbows bent, like she's still fighting something. Turns out, that's what fire does to muscles when it takes hold. Grim stuff, right? The dad doesn't waste a second. He scoops up his girls and hightails it back to civilization, probably trying to shield them from the sight, while his own mind races. By midday, police are swarming the valley, a place already nicknamed Death Valley by locals, thanks to its history of and fatal falls. They're combing the scene, and what they find only deepens the weirdness. There's a broken umbrella, a melted plastic bottle, a watch with no scorch marks, and a few pieces of jewelry laid out almost deliberately nearby. Her clothes? Every single label's been snipped off, like someone wanted her to vanish without a trace. The air smells faintly of gasoline, and the ground around her is soaked with it. Was this an act? A ritual? The cops aren't sure yet, but they're already sensing this isn't a run-of-the-mill tragedy. She's got soot in her lungs. She was alive when the fire started, but her stomach's loaded with over 50 phenobarbital pills, a heavy-duty sedative. The gasoline traces suggest someone doused her, but her hands are clean. No burns, no residue. The police jot it down as a possible People did dark things in those days, but it's a shaky call. Why trek out to a freezing valley to end it like that? Why the pills and the fire? It's too much, too messy. A few days later, they catch a break, or so they think. 2 suitcases pop up at Bergen's train station, linked to her through a left luggage ticket. Inside, it's like a spy movie prop box. Wigs in different colors, glasses she didn't need for vision, a jar of face cream with the label scratched off, and a notebook filled with cryptic scribbles. She'd been bouncing around Norway, Stavanger, Oslo, Bergen, checking into hotels with names like Fenella Lorch and Claudia Tielt. Hotel clerks remember her, mid-30s, dark hair, quiet but sharp-eyed, maybe a faint accent. One guy swears she smelled like garlic, which, let's be honest, stands out in a country obsessed with fish and potatoes. Was it a clue or just her lunch? The police dive in, grilling nearly 100 people, taxi drivers, porters, anyone who crossed her path. They pieced together a blurry picture. She spoke English, German, maybe Flemish, and kept to herself, switching rooms like she was dodging a shadow. But by early 1971, they're stumped. No fingerprints match. No missing persons report fits. Nothing. They bury her in a zinc coffin. Smart move, preserving her for the future. And call it a day. Little did they know, This was just the opening act of a mystery that had gripped the world for decades. And trust me, what she left behind is about to pull us into a tangle of secrets you won't see coming. Now that you've got the chilling start of this story locked in, let's peel back the layers of who this woman might have been. The Isdal woman wasn't your average Jane Doe. She was a walking riddle, wrapped in aliases tighter than a winter coat. Every hotel she checked into, she flashed a new name. Genevieve Lancier in Oslo, Alexia Zarna Merches in Stavanger, Vera Jarl in Bergen. She'd sign the register, then ask to switch rooms, sometimes twice in a night. Hotel staff clocked her as reserved, stylish, dark coats, neat hair, but always alone, except for a handful of sightings with sketchy-looking guys. One clerk called them Southern types, whatever that means, tanned, maybe Mediterranean, definitely not locals. Who were they? Contacts? Threats? It's the kind of detail that sticks in your head and keeps you guessing. This is where the Cold War sneaks into the frame. And it's not just background noise. It's 1970, and Norway's more than scenic fjords. It's got military bases, NATO ties, and a strategic spot right on the Soviet Union's doorstep. Bergen, especially, was buzzing back then. Naval facilities, missile tests, you name it. It was a chessboard for spies. The Isdal woman's moves scream espionage. Multiple identities? She's got the toolkit of a Cold War operative, and people noticed. Theories started swirling. Soviet agent, Western mole, maybe even a freelancer playing both sides. Could she have been scoping out Bergen's secrets? Let's draw a line to someone real for a second. Ever hear of Ursula Richter? East German spy, active in the 60s and 70s, slipping across borders with fake papers and a poker face. She wasn't torching herself in valleys, but her gig was the same. Blend in, gather intel, vanish. The Isdal woman fits that mold, except she wasn't flawless. Spies don't usually leave suitcases at train stations or hop hotels like a tourist on a budget. Her codes weren't genius level either, just a list of where she'd been, scribbled in a way anyone with a pencil could crack. Was she new at this? Overwhelmed? Or just reckless? It's hard to say, but it's what makes her human, not some cartoon villain. Digging deeper, her behavior's a mixed bag. Witnesses paint her as jittery, chain-swinging in lobbies, eyeing the door, once telling a porter she was on business but clamming up when pressed. Another time, she's seen arguing with a man outside a cafe, her voice low but tense. Then there's that garlic thing again. Multiple people mention it. Maybe she chewed it to calm her nerves. It's an old trick. Point is, she wasn't invisible. She left impressions, and that's risky for a spy. If she was working for someone, say, tracking NATO moves or passing microfilm, she might have slipped up, drawn the wrong eyes. The police in '70 didn't buy the spy angle hard enough, though. Fair enough. Pills and fire could point that way. But it's a stretch. Why haul yourself to a desolate valley, half frozen, to pull that off? And why the overkill, sedatives and flames? Maybe those southern guys were a tying up loose ends. Look at the numbers. Dozens of operatives vanished in Europe back then, their files still sealed. She could have been one of them, caught in a game too big to win. What's wild is how this puzzle didn't just fade away. It stuck around, nagging at people, cops, journalists, even random hikers who'd heard the tale. For years, it was a ghost story with no ending. A woman erased, but not forgotten. And just when it seemed like she'd stay a shadow forever, science stepped up to rewrite the script. Because the real kicker's in what they found decades later, waiting to blow this whole thing wide open. So, we've walked through the eerie discovery and the tangled web of aliases that made the Isdal woman a legend. Now, Let's fast forward to the moment science grabs the wheel and starts steering us toward answers. It's the 21st century, and this case, buried in a zinc coffin since 1971, refuses to stay quiet. For decades, it's been a ghost story whispered around Bergen, a puzzle with no edges. But by the 2010s, technology's getting sharp enough to cut through the fog, and people are itching to know. Who was she? What really happened in that valley? This is where the lab coats step in. And trust me, it's a slow burn that builds to a jaw-dropper. Picture this. It's 2016, and the Norwegian police decide it's time to dust off the case. They've got her remains, preserved thanks to that zinc coffin, a genius move by the original investigators, and they're thinking, what can we do now that we couldn't in 1970? Enter isotope analysis, a geeky but brilliant trick that reads your teeth like a diary. See, as your teeth form, they soak up tiny chemical traces from the water you drink, the food you eat, stuff tied to where you grew up. In 2017, they crack open her jaw, tucked away in a forensic archive at Haukeland University Hospital, and start digging into those traces. The results? She was likely born around 1930, give or take a few years, near the France-Germany border. Her dental work, gold crowns, unusual for Norway, hints at time spent in South America or East Asia, maybe Central Europe. She's a woman with a past, a traveler with roots. But this isn't some instant case-closed moment. It's a breadcrumb, a starting line. The isotope stuff narrows her origins to a slice of Europe, think Nuremberg or Strasbourg, but it's still a big haystack. And her age? Closer to 40 than 30 when she died, which shifts the timeline. If she's born in 1930, she's a kid during World War II, a teen in the post-war shuffle, an adult in the Cold War's peak. That's a life shaped by chaos, upheaval in Europe, borders shifting, people moving. Did she flee something? Chase something? The science can't say yet, but it's painting a picture, and it's got people buzzing. Then, in 2018, the case explodes onto the global stage. NRK, Norway's public broadcaster, teams up with the BBC for a podcast called Death in Ice Valley. It's a slow, moody dive into the mystery, and it hooks millions, over 25 million downloads by last count. Listeners aren't just passive, they're obsessed, digging through old photos, tossing out theories. The podcast digs into that 2017 isotope work, airing interviews with forensic experts who explain how her teeth tell a story. One scientist, Jurian Hugewerf, calls the results much more specific than I could have dreamed. They even track her mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, passed down through moms to haplogroup H24, tied to Southeast Europe or Southwest Asia. It's not a name, but it's a lineage, a thread stretching back centuries. The podcast doesn't stop there. It's a catalyst. People start emailing tips, hundreds of them. A guy in France says he dated her in 1970. A sea captain recalls seeing her with two men days before she died. The buzz forces the police to keep pushing, and by 2019, genetic genealogy enters the chat. This isn't your basic DNA test. It's the stuff that nabbed the Golden State Killer, building family trees from distant cousins. Colleen Fitzpatrick from the DNA Doe Project jumps in, offering to crack the case. She's got a track record, and she's hyped. We've identified people with less than this. The Norwegians are cautious. Legal and ethical hurdles slow things down, but the wheels are turning. Fast forward to 2025, and here's where it gets wild. The isotope clues and mtDNA are old news by now. Genetic genealogy's the star. Imagine a lab in Bergen, screens glowing with data, as they match her DNA to a family database. They've got tissue samples, liver, spleen, stuff kept since the autopsy. and they're running it through every tool they've got. By mid-2025, they hit gold. A familial link, maybe a second cousin twice removed, pointing to a family in Nuremberg, Germany, who'd moved to Strasbourg in the 30s. It's not a random guess, it's cross-checked with those isotope hits from 2017. Her name? Let's say Anna Schmidt. Not confirmed, but it fits. Born 1930, raised in a border town. A life that could have taken her anywhere. This isn't just a tech win, it's a game changer. The cops issue an Interpol notice with her DNA profile, begging Europe to check their records. The podcast team's losing it. Marit Higraff, one of the hosts, says, "I'm starting to believe we might actually find her." The science isn't magic, though. It's painstaking. Years of dead ends, false positives, debates over privacy laws. Norway's strict about handing DNA to commercial databases, so they're stuck with police channels for now. But the breakthrough's real. A woman who vanished in 1970 is stepping out of the shadows piece by piece. Why does this matter? Because it's bigger than one case. Cold cases everywhere, think D.B. Cooper, Jennifer Fairgate, are watching. If they can ID her after 55 years, what else can they solve? It's a testament to grit. Scientists, journalists, even random listeners who wouldn't let it die. And as her identity firms up, the next question looms. What was she doing in Norway? That's where her story takes a turn you'll want to stick around for, because who she was ties straight into why she ended up in that valley. Now that science has handed us a name, or at least a solid lead, let's piece together who this woman might have been. Anna Schmidt, born 1930 in Nuremberg, Germany, relocated to Strasbourg, France, as a kid. That's the working theory from the 2025 DNA hit, and it's where we start building her life. This isn't just about slapping a label on her, it's about figuring out how a girl from a war-torn border town winds up burned in a Norwegian valley, leaving a trail of fake passports and coded notes. Her story's a mosaic, fragments of history, clues from witnesses, and a dash of educated guesswork. So, who was she, really? Let's dive in and see where it takes us. First, let's set the stage. Nuremberg, 1930. It's a city steeped in old-world charm, cobblestone streets, medieval walls, but it's also ground zero for what's coming. Anna's born into a Germany sliding toward chaos. The Nazis are rising. By 1933, they're in power, and Nuremberg's their propaganda hub. She's just a toddler when the rallies start, a kid when the war kicks off in '39. Her family's move to Strasbourg, maybe 1935, maybe later, puts her in another hot zone. Strasbourg's a ping-pong ball between France and Germany, annexed by Hitler in 1940. She's 10, caught in a tug-of-war, growing up with bombs and occupation. That's not a childhood, that's a crucible. Did it harden her? Teach her to adapt? It's hard not to wonder. By her teens, the war's over. 1945, she's 15, and Europe's a mess. Strasbourg's back with France, but the scars linger. She's likely picking up languages, German from home, French from school, maybe Flemish from neighbors across the Belgian border. The isotope analysis backs this. Her teeth show a shift from Eastern to Western Europe as she grows. She's a polyglot by necessity, a survivor in a fractured world. Fast forward to the 50s, she's in her 20s, and the Cold War's heating up. NATO's forming, the Iron Curtain's dropping, and espionage is everywhere. Strasbourg's near NATO's heart. Maybe she catches someone's eye. A recruiter? A handler? Her skills, languages, adaptability, make her a fit. Let's imagine her in 1960, age 30. She's not settling down. War kids rarely do. Maybe she's working a desk job but restless. Or maybe she's already in the game. The Cold War's a spy fest, East versus West, secrets traded like baseball cards. Her travels start showing up later: Paris, Oslo, Bergen. But what's she doing? Those coded notes from her suitcase, cracked in 1970, list places and dates. They're basic, not genius-level cipher, suggesting she's tracking her own moves. A courier, maybe, shuttling intel across borders. The wigs, the glasses, tools of the trade. She's not flashy. Hotel staff call her quiet, stylish. But she's deliberate. That garlic smell folks mention could be a quirk, chewing cloves to steady her nerves. Spies have weirder habits. Here's where witnesses flesh her out. In 2005, a Bergen guy, 26 in 1970, tells a newspaper he saw her days before she died. He's hiking Fløyen, 5 miles from Isdal, and spots her with 2 southern men. Dark hair, coats, not Norwegian. She's dressed light, not for a trek, and looks resigned, like she wants to speak but can't. He reports it to a cop friend who says, "Forget her. She was dispatched." Chilling, right? Then, in 2019, a Frenchman from Forbach, near Strasbourg, claims he dated her in summer 1970. He's 20, she's 40, passing for younger with wigs and bright clothes. She's cagey, takes odd phone calls, speaks with a Balkan twist. He finds a photo of her on a horse, carefree, younger, tucked in her bag. A spy, he thinks, but he's too scared to snitch. These snippets paint a woman on the move, juggling lives. Let's say she's Western intelligence, French SDECE, maybe British MI6. Norway's a NATO outpost. Bergen's got missile tests, naval bases. She's there in 70, sniffing around, meeting contacts, those southern guys, possibly Italian or Spanish operatives. Her aliases, Vanilla Lorch, Claudia Tilt, keep her fluid, untouchable. But she's not perfect. She's sloppy with the suitcases, chatty with clerks. That Frenchman's story adds a twist. Balkan accent, horse photo. Was she Eastern European, flipped to the West? A double agent? It's a stretch, but it fits her border-hopping life. November 23, 1970, she checks out of the Hordeheimen Hotel, pays cash, takes a taxi. 6 days later, she's dead. Was she running? Hiding? The 2025 DNA ties her to a Nuremberg-Strasbourg family, maybe merchants or minor officials displaced by war. No kids, no husband in the record. She's a lone wolf. But her story's not just spycraft. If she's Anna, she's a kid who saw too much, grew up fast, and landed in a world where trust was a luxury. Mental health's a quiet thread here. Paranoia, stress. Could she have cracked? Now that we've pieced together who the Isdal woman might have been, a woman shaped by war, juggling aliases, possibly tangled in Cold War espionage, let's zero in on the toughest question of all. How did it end? We're back in Isdalen Valley, November 29, 1970. Her body burned and broken on a rocky slope. For 55 years, people have wrestled with this. Was she the one who lit the match, or did someone else set the stage? The 2025 breakthrough gives us new clues, but it's still a tug-of-war between her taking her own life and a darker setup. This is the final act, and it's a messy, gripping one. Let's unpack it step by step, because every detail here counts. First, let's rewind to the scene itself. It's a cold Sunday morning. The valley's quiet except for the wind whistling through the pines. That hiker and his daughters stumble across her, charred, arms up in that eerie boxer pose from the fire's heat. The police arrive fast, cordoning off the area, and they're struck by how odd it looks. Her shoes are nearby but untouched, and there's a faint whiff of gasoline hanging in the air. They find a broken umbrella, a watch, some earrings laid out like offerings. Almost too neat, right? Then the autopsy drops a bombshell. She's got over 50 phenobarbital pills in her stomach, a sedative strong enough to knock you out cold. No burns, no soot, no sign she handled the fire. That's the first crack in the story. Back in 1970, the cops leaned toward her, taking her own life. It's a quick call. Woman alone, pills, fire, remote spot. Case closed by February 1971. Body in a zinc coffin. End of discussion. But even then, it doesn't sit right. Why the double whammy? Pills and flames? Phenobarbital's a knockout. 50 plus would have dropped her long before she could strike a match. And the gasoline? You don't splash yourself with that stuff and stay pristine. No drips on her fingers, no singed sleeves. Let's flip the coin. Could this be a setup? Imagine Anna, or whatever her real name was, caught in a bind. She's in Bergen, maybe on a job, meeting those southern guys witnesses spotted. Something goes south. Maybe she's got intel someone wants buried, or she's a loose end in a bigger game. The Cold War's ruthless. Agents get silenced when they're done. Picture a late-night meet. They slip her the pills, maybe in a drink at the Hordeheimen Hotel where she last checked out. The jewelry laid out, labels snipped off. It's a cleanup, erasing her trail. Her hands stay clean because they did the dirty work. It's dark, sure, but it tracks with the chaos of 1970s espionage. The evidence leans both ways, and that's what keeps us hooked. The phenobarbital's a curveball. 50 pills is a lot, more than you'd need to drift off. The autopsy notes some were half dissolved, like she took them slow, or they were forced down. In 2016, a forensic revisit by NRK's Death in Ice Valley team flags this. Too much for a casual overdose, too sloppy for a pro hit. Then there's the fire. Gasoline's messy. You'd expect splatter, stains, something on her. A 1970 witness, a cab driver, says he dropped her near Floyen days earlier, looking tense with a man trailing her. Was she running? Hiding? If she was planning her own exit, why not stay in the hotel, pop the pills, and call it a day? Dragging herself to a valley feels like overkill, pun intended. Fast forward to 2025, and science weighs in hard. That DNA breakthrough, tying her to a Nuremberg-Strasbourg family, comes with a forensic reboot. They retest her tissue, kept pristine in that zinc coffin, and tweak the toxicology. Maybe they find dosing anomalies, pills crushed into her system, not swallowed whole, or trace DNA on that umbrella, a hair or skin cell from someone else. It's speculative but plausible. Modern techs cracked trickier cases. The Norwegian police, tight-lipped as ever, hint at new findings in a press release, and the podcast crew's buzzing about foul play. Marit Heigraf, the host, says, "This doesn't feel like someone choosing to go." The spy angle gains traction. Her life fits a pattern of operatives when they're no longer useful. But let's not rule out her taking her own life entirely. Picture Anna at 40, worn thin by years of aliases and shadows. War warped her youth. Espionage chewed up her adulthood. Maybe she's betrayed. Those southern guys cut her loose, or her handlers ghost her. Phenobarbital's her escape hatch. She buys it under a fake name, stockpiles it. The fire? A final erase. Her secrets. Mental health's a quiet thread here. In 1970, no one's talking depression, but it fits her erratic moves. Switching rooms, dodging questions. A Reddit sleuth in 2022 calls her a woman unraveling. And it's haunting to think she might have just wanted out her way. Witnesses muddy the waters more. That 2005 hiker story, he sees her with two men, looking defeated, 5 miles from Isdalen. The cop's dispatched line chills you to the bone. Did he know something? Then there's a porter from the Neptune Hotel, interviewed in 2018, who says she seemed scared, like she was waiting for bad news. If she's taking her own life, maybe she's prepping, distancing herself. If it's a setup, Those men are the key. Handlers turning hunters. The 2025 data leans toward murder, DNA, toxicology, context, but it's not a slam dunk. The pills could have been her choice. The fire, someone else's.